Hi everyone. I'm going to continue to read The Whipping Boy by Sid Fleischman, and it's a very hot summer day here, and I thought I'd come outside and read a few chapters for you. Now, what's going on is the whipping boy takes all the punishment for the prince, and he is called Prince Brat because he is a real brat of a kid. Well, he wants to run away, and of course, he takes the whipping boy with him, and they're getting kidnapped by two bad guys. And that's where we're at now. Chapter 6, in which the plot thickens. Wisp of fog clung like tattered rags to the trees, and then the forest cleared. But so thick were the pines that the morning sun barely touched the ground. Hold Your Nose Billy pushed aside a low branch, revealing a rickety timbered hut with a moldy thatched roof. "There's our castle, young Majesty," he said, chuckling. "Accept our hospitality. I hope you won't mind sleeping on the floor." The floor was hard-packed earth. Braided garlic bulbs hung like knotted ropes from the rafters. "I'm hungry," said Prince Brat. "And feast you will," said Hold Your Nose Billy. "Cutwater, serve 'em up the finest bread and herring." Jeremy had made many a meal on bread and herring when he was in luck, and felt hungry enough to ask for seconds. Prince Brat bared his teeth. "I'd sooner eat mud." He reached out for the wicker basket, but Cutwater smashed it back. "What do we got here?" muttered the bone-thin man, and threw back the lid. "Roll your eyes at this, Billy. Meat pies, looks like, and fruit tarts, and a brace of roast pheasant. We'll eat like kings." "Hands off, that's mine," the prince cried out. "Was yours," snapped Cutwater. Lawks, Jimmy thought, hadn't the prince run away in royal style? He had even brought a china plate, a silver spoon, and a silver knife for himself. Digging around deeper in the basket, the garlicky outlaw called out to Cutwater, "Bring the lantern closer. What's this?" And here they are with Hold Your Nose, Billy, and Cutwater. In the gloom of the hut, the big man lifted out a golden crown. "That's mine," bleated the prince. "Was yours," said Hold Your Nose Billy, placing the crown on the tangled red nest of his hair. "Prince Hold Your Nose Billy," said Cutwater, burst out joyously. He began to scratch himself as if his shirt were crawling with fleas, which Jimmy thought it probably was. "We're dog rich." "That crown? A trifle," scoffed Hold Your Nose Billy. "We can be richer and dog rich." The empty-headed prince, Jeremy thought. Why has he brought along his crown? To put it on his head and expect vagabonds and cutthroats to fall on their knees? The big, raw-faced outlaw grabbed Prince Brat off the ground and shook the heft of him as if he were weighing a sack of potatoes. He is about 55 pounds by my reckoning," he said. "We'll write the king a command, Cutwater. 55 pounds of gold coin in trade for this royal tadpole." Chapter 7, being an account of a great mix-up. Cutwater rummaged around in his black oak chest of stolen goods. Handkerchiefs flew out like soiled white doves, worn shoes, ladies' combs, a cowbell, a junk heap. They've had lean pickings, this raggedy pair of highwaymen, Jimmy thought, and maybe not as smart and clever as the strong sellers made out. "Here's a scrap of paper, Billy," said Cutwater, finding it in his pocket of his stolen coat. "But how are we going to do the scribblement? We can't write." "I'm hungry," complained the prince. "I'll have a veal pie, sir." Hold Your Nose Billy ignored him. He poked around for a beetroot and squeezed out the juice with his bare hand. It dripped like blood onto the china plate. "Here's ink for you, Prince. Take that hawk feather and scratch out a message." Prince Brat folded his arms. "I don't take orders from curs and villains." "Think of your pa," said Hold Your Nose Billy. "He'll be ever so much obliged to know you're safe and hearty." "I told you I'm hungry." "You won't eat a bean till you do us the document." "But I can't write," blurted out Prince Brat. "And crows can't fly," erupted the big outlaw with a blast of garlicky breath. "You're a prince. Kings and such are like to learn to read and write as soon as they tumble out of the cradle. Don't think you can pull over the wool over our eyes, hop to it. But I can't so much scratch out my own name. Jemmy shot a calculating glance at Prince Brat. His pesky hide hardly seemed worth saving, but a scheme had leaped into his head. He might be able to trick these mangy outlaws into letting the prince go, and Jemmy would be rid of Prince Brat once and for all. "Oh, give me the hawk's quill. I'll write the words," he announced. "That's right," Prince Pat chimed in. "My whipping boy knows all his letters. Fall to, Jemmy from the streets." "Hold on," said Hold-your-nose Billy, his sharp gaze flicking from one boy to the other. "This ignorant whipping boy knows his letters, and the royal prince can't even sign his own name? Something's amiss here." "What are you thinking, Billy?" said Cutwater. "I'm thinking these lads have mixed themselves up to flummox us." Jemmy lifted his chin arrogantly and tried to look as prince-like as possible. "Nonsense! I'm a mere whipping boy." The big man rumbled up a laugh, showing a mouthful of yellow teeth. "You take us for a bedrock numbskull, certain as eggs. You're the prince, the genuine straight-up-and-down royal highness." Prince Brat's face turned red as a hot iron. "That ratty street orphan!" he bellowed. "That low-born—" "Silence!" Jemmy commanded. "Can't you see the game is up? They're on to us. Hold your tongue." "But I'm his royal highness." God, Jemmy thought. The haughty prince didn't seem to have the sense of a gnat. Couldn't he see a plan afoot? "Save your breath," snapped Jemmy. "Stop giving yourself airs, you witless serving boy." "Servant boy? Don't you address me—" "Bag your head," snapped Hold-your-nose Billy. "Give him a kick, Cutwater, if we hear another peep out of him." "Hand me the hawk's feathers," said Jemmy. "I'll write my papa, the king." Chapter 8. The Ransom Note. Hold-your-nose Billy tilted the princely crown on his head. "Now what have you writ so far?" Jemmy glanced up from the sheet of paper. "To the king's most sacred majesty, dear papa." "Aye, that sounds proper, respectful. What else?" "Our captors are loyal subjects, but scoundrels by trade. Don't cross them." "Make that a mite stronger," said the outlaw, beginning to pace. "Tell him we're shameful men, and rough as a sack of nails. Warn him we fear no gallows." Jemmy dropped the quill and beet juice and continued scribbling. "I'll tell him you've got reserved seats in hell." "Aye, that's the ticket." Cutwater had begun gnawing away at a roasted pheasant, and his cheeks swelled out as if he hadn't a monstrous toothache. "What about the king's soldiers, Billy? Now that the fog's listed, they'll be following the lads like a trail of ants. Puts my spine a shiver." "Faugh," said Hold-your-nose Billy. "Even rabbits get mixed up and lost in this forest. We're well hid, Cutwater." "I'll warn Papa," Jemmy offered generously, "that if you spy out a single uniform, you'll crack my neck like a chicken's." Prince Brat sat suddenly on a pile of moldy bed straw. He stared icily at the whipping boy who had seized his royal title. "And don't forget the reward, Billy," said Cutwater. "We want the prince's weight in gold bangers, right?" "Tell the king that," said Hold-your-nose Billy in big letters. "Now let me reckon out a safe spot to deliver the loot." Jemmy dipped the quill, but then paused. "Gaw," he thought, "it's not enough to choose my words as if I were a prince. Show some high and mighty, Jemmy. Think like a prince." "Dimwits," he flared up. "Catch penny rogues. I will not be exchanged for such a trifle. My mere weight, a paltry treasure that you could carry on your shoulders. How dare you insult me?" Hold-your-nose Billy's eyes shot up in a bewildered surprise. "Incite you? Insult you? A trifle? A prince is worth a prince's ransom." His eyebrows lowered as quickly as they had risen. "No offense meant, lad. How would you calculate a proper ransom?" "A wagon-load of gold at least, and jewels mixed in." "As I'm alive, a wagon-load?" Cutwater gulped down the wad of fowl in his mouth. We did forget about the jewels, Billy." Here's a picture of Jemmy writing the note. "A wagon-load it is, then," exclaimed the hairy outlaw. Prince Brat's mouth fell open at the whipping boy's nervy mischief. Hold-your-nose Billy stood over Jemmy's shoulders and watched the words being scratched out. Finally he said, "Have you made your sign yet?" "About to," replied Jemmy, with as much force as he could manage. he wrote, "Your obedient son, Prince Horace." And that's the end of this chapter. I'll read another part tomorrow.